The only people that that sounds good to are people who already think like you. You are actually pushing them away from you, your party, and your view, because those things, when you say things like that, do not sound attractive to people like that at all. You're not winning anybody over. So today we're going to learn a new word. The word is Vranyo. It is a Russian word, and essentially what it means is that it is a deliberate and expected lie. It is something where people essentially have a culture of lying and they talk back and forth. One knows that the other one is lying, and the other one even knows that the other one knows that they're lying, but they just kind of nod along. And it's just accepted that they're lying back and forth and that they give each other the kind of common courtesy of just allowing them to lie. The definition that I found for it is that it's a special word in Russia, which means telling a barefaced lie, which you do not expect anyone to believe. Um, Another person had an explanation that says, "You know I'm lying, and I know that you know, and you know that I know that you know, but I go ahead with a straight face, and you nod seriously and even take notes." Dostoevsky, he's a famous Russian author, he noted that Vranyo was greeted with delicate reciprocity at all social gatherings of his day, making the lie a two-way collaboration. And so it is kind of permeates through some of Russian culture, not just Russia. Okay, this is kind of in Slavic countries. And I'm not trying to pick on them. I'm actually going to try to make a point with this. It actually permeates a lot of Western societies as well. We just don't necessarily have a word for it. They just have a couple different words for lying, and that's why I'm choosing this one. Um, Another example would be here in the States, right? Is that we would be sitting around a campfire and one person is telling some huge fantastic lie and we all know that he's lying, but we just kind of allow it to go on and we treat him, just kind of nod along and pretend like the story is real. And it's normally a lot easier than actually addressing the lie itself. This can permeate businesses and even things like militaries where you could kind of envision what this would be like inside of a business setting, let's say a production plant, or let's say it would happen inside of a military, which is happening kind of right now in a certain Eastern Slavic military as well. In some cultures where it's even kind of expected, where this is the norm, the normal way of doing things, it's a way of getting a promotion. It's a way to stay out of hot water, maybe not get fired. So you just kind of embellish your reports and make them look a lot better than what they actually are. Send them on up the chain of command. He might embellish it a little bit further, send it up to his higher ups. And where you start getting into trouble with this is when real decisions start being made on this data. Companies and militaries have real algorithms in place to where if you punch in the data, it will give them kind of a percent chance of success, let's say. However, these algorithms and stuff that are in place are there with the like expecting to have real and complete and accurate data. Once you punch those in with the reports that are given you, if they are not fully accurate, you're going to make some horrible, horrible decisions. So when you're at home and everything is going okay, you're just kind of training and everything. This isn't necessarily a huge deal. The commanders are told that yes, we completed this and this exercise. All the troops are strong, they're in shape, they're battle ready, they have had all the proper training, all of their equipment and vehicles are serviceable and they are ready. They're good to go, tip top shape. All of our troops are next to special forces and we're going to have an easy time. This all gets run up the chain of command. They start punching things into their algorithm. It shows, hey, we're going to roll over Ukraine in 24 hours. However, the data that they punched in was contingent on the fact that they were getting accurate data. And lo and behold, they roll into that country, and we see the mess that happens right now. And this incomplete data, whether right or wrong, regardless of what side you're on, right now is costing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives because they have a culture of Vranyo. Also, let's say in a business and you open up a whole new wing, a whole new service department, and everything in your business has been reported up to the top as everything is running smoothly. We've got good employees, everybody has good morale, and you punch everything in, and you're making decisions on this, and everything looks very good, looks like, the best thing to do is to open that new service department, but you're doing that on inaccurate data, you don't have a handle on this, and all of a sudden the next thing you know that your new service department is failing and you can't figure out why, and it's because you have been fed incomplete data. And sometimes you've been fed bold-faced lies, and you would never suspect people around you inside your circles to do something like that. We kind of tend to have a trust of the people around us as being the exceptions, that they are actually the ones that have integrity, that they're going to tell me the truth regardless of what happens. You might be the type of leader where you want to have the data even if it's bad, just so that you know what type of corrections to make, not necessarily to discipline somebody if they make a mistake, but simply because you need to have accurate data so that you can run your company, whatever business, family, or, military, whatever, government, run it properly. But if people are not feeding you the proper data, all of a sudden things go haywire. When a building inspector comes and tells you that your home is not being built to spec, you don't fire him until you get an inspector that's going to come tell you what you want to hear. You want your home built to spec. If it's not, you say, thank you for telling me that. I'm either going to go make the contractor build this home to spec, or I'm going to find another one who can. You would never fire that building inspector and tell them, well, hey, I'm going to keep going through these building inspectors until I hear what I want to hear. It's sometimes it's called a comfortable lie. These deliberate lies are what people want to hear. In some militaries, like what we're seeing in Russia right now, is that these commanders did not want to hear bad news. This stems all the way back to pre-Soviet era. Way before that. And when a commander, or let's say a junior officer, would come say, hey, our equipment is not up to specs or whatever, rather than trying to figure out what's wrong with the supply issue to see why they can't get the proper equipment or the proper parts to fix their equipment, rather than taking an introspective look at that and trying to figure out what's going on there to enable their junior officers to make better decisions and be more combat ready, what they would do is they would simply fire that junior officer, or that junior officer was not able to climb the ladders of success. And so you were actually punished for telling the truth. And they would literally put commanders in place that would tell them what they would want to hear. And therefore, there were a lot of things such as maintenance, or even practices such as combat exercises that you do to make sure that you were combat ready, that would just be said, oh yeah, we did it, everybody did great, blah, 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 and they really didn't do anything. Maybe the troops went out in the field, kind of went camping for a couple weeks or something, came back, and everything was written up that it went swimmingly. Everybody hit the bullseye 97% of the time at 600 meters with their rifle. Every vehicle, performed flawlessly, and there were no commanders that went out there and did, snap inspections to see if what was being said was true. There wasn't like a general that came up and said, okay, well, you said this is what happened when you went on your exercise, so show me a real quick one here to see if this is actually true. Nobody did that because they actually didn't really want to know the truth. They had an agenda. They wanted to know that they were perfect, and life went on. So I say all of this because I'm trying to make a specific point. We also have this stuff happen inside of our personal lives. I see this happening a lot right now. inside of the United States, we tend to have our own little circles that we have our friends inside of a certain circle, normally a very close demographic. We kind of tend to hover around people that are similar to us. It's a lot more comfortable that way. Um, and we definitely see this right now in our politics. We see this in our religion. And I think that there's a lot of people right now that are pulling their hair out because they don't understand what's going on inside of America right now. They have absolutely no clue why they could be losing elections, or why people are walking out of their churches and not coming back, and they can't understand why so many people are upset with their church or upset with their leadership. And we even have businesses right now that are in great turmoil because they can't figure out why people don't want to come to work anymore. And what has happened is that, some degree, these people have participated in this small, comfortable, expected lies. Because if you're inside of these circles, and I have experienced this myself several times, where if you speak up and you tell someone an uncomfortable truth, you tend to get a lot of backlash. And it doesn't even have to be a very major, like, it doesn't even have to be that big of a bombshell of a truth. Like, it shouldn't be something that just wrecks their perspective and that just tears them down, and that is like this major traumatic event or something. But people act like it is. And I've even had this in politics of when I criticize certain parties. There are some that seem to be worse than others right now. Where you say something small, like the Conservative Party tends to always just go to the rigged election thing, and they always tend to just default to tearing somebody down personally. You see this with a lot of political parties of like, hey, why did this person get elected? He can't even talk right. He can't even stitch two sentences together properly. He looks like some kind of a moron, an idiot. I mean, why would you elect somebody that looks like that? And they'll do anything to kind of demean these other candidates. That's kind of where they default to. Past, I'm divulging a little bit of information here that maybe I shouldn't be. In my past, I have been majority of the time I have been fiscally conservative consistently throughout my past. So let's see a little bit of why this happens. Okay, so I come from I come from a very conservative background. Okay, and one thing that I have noticed that I don't think was quite as commonplace even 20 years ago, but that is very prevalent right now, especially among the conservative politics and even the conservative religion right now, is that if you say anything that is not kind of an extreme conservative ideology, and you say, hey, maybe you want to take a look at this. This might be why people are, not voting for too many conservatives right now, why conservatives are having a hard time. And people will immediately cast you out of the circle as being some kind of a liberal, socialist, whatever. I mean, I've had people call me all kinds of stuff like that. For just simply mentioning some very basic things. And I guess when you're an extreme person on whether it's right or left, somebody can be walking down the center. They can be more centered in their political views. But if you're extreme right and you look to the left and you see that person, even though they're kind of center, they look left to you. Okay, it doesn't mean that that person is to use their words, like a flaming liberal. It just means that maybe they have a more balanced view. Maybe they're not quite as hard right as what you are, or hard left. I mean, either way. I know that you have it on both sides. It just really seems to be very prevalent among a certain party right now, and I mean, it's the Conservative Party. I mean, let's be honest about it. And so when we only converse and socialize with those inside of our own circles and with those who share similar ideologies, okay, we often falsely believe that our viewpoints, our political beliefs, our world views are shared by the majority of the people out there because we very rarely come in contact with those outside of our beliefs, or they appear to be in the minority when we do because we're surrounded by so many people that think similarly to us. And so when we believe here in rural Ohio, which is a very conservative community, that, you know, when you talk to everybody here, I mean, from south of Cleveland down to Columbus and Cincinnati, this whole heartland of America, like inside of Ohio here, the heart of Ohio, yeah, and most of the people have the similar beliefs and would vote for the same person. It blows our mind when our candidate doesn't win. And then all of a sudden, because we have made those assumptions, because we can't see outside of our circles, when somebody comes up and says that this other opponent, political opponent, was elected as governor or something like that, we cannot fathom it. We're just like, the elections must be rigged, because this whole time we have been telling everybody around us that, oh, this person is going to win 100%. I've heard it a lot. Red wave, not just red wave, but red tidal wave, red tsunamis, red, you know, that the conservatives are just going to win by storm. And it comes because they have segregated themselves. They have pushed themselves off into a corner and surrounded themselves with people who will only tell them what they want to hear. And then when the more populated areas such as Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Cleveland, all of a sudden push, you know, they have a higher voter turnout or whatever, and these highly densely populated areas end up taking it, and, you know, the Liberal Party ends up winning. We all of a sudden want to sit there and say that the elections were rigged because we just cannot understand what the worldview of somebody in Philadelphia is, or what somebody in Cincinnati. Like, we're far removed from that, and we don't really associate with those people, and we just can't understand it. When you have your political leaders sitting there telling you that this is definitely 100% going to be a red wave or a blue wave, whatever. I mean, I've only ever heard this really from conservatives saying red wave, and this is where I come from, this is what I know, this is what, you know, I hear all the time. When they're constantly assuring you that your party is going to take the government over and you're going to win, um, you really don't have any other options but jumping to false conclusions, and they don't either when they're telling you something as truth. Like, where are they going to go? They're not going to sit there and say, oh, I'm sorry guys, I was wrong. They're too proud for that. They're too arrogant for that. They're the ones that are coming out making these bold-faced statements in politics normally do not have the integrity to tell you when they're wrong. Okay, they're so heavily entrenched in their narrative that if they would all of a sudden say, hey, hey, I was wrong, this didn't work out this way, they would have a ton of explaining to do. So what they do is they tell you these small, comfortable lies to prop themselves up. And so the easiest thing to do when your party does not win is to go and blame it on the other party that won. You're literally not looking at yourself and seeing, hey, what could I do better? Why don't we give people better choices? Why don't we run better political candidates? Why don't we have better policies? Why don't we stand for better things that people can agree with more? Hey, maybe we are being too extreme, you know, because nobody wants to vote for us, but they don't ever do that. They always go and say, oh, well, it was rigged. That's just the default. I even mentioned this before the elections ever happened. I was watching conservative friends of mine that, I mean, I'm friends with. Like, I don't hate them. I'm actually friends with. And things coming across their posts and newsfeed were, they were already setting up their narrative to say that the elections were rigged before election day ever rolled around. I heard this all the time. I heard this coming from their political candidates. And what was sad is that a lot of these people were simply parroting what their political candidates were telling them. And things were being said that, well, if they count the ballots right, we're going to have a red wave. Those types of things were being said all the time, and that was preloading. What people don't understand, that is preloading the narrative that if we do not win, then it's because the ballots were not counted properly, that there was corruption in the polling system, and that the polling machines were, rigged with all kinds of crazy software, and the Russians were involved, right? The Russians get blamed for everything, so why not? All right. Um, and of course, it was all the liberals' fault. Well, I want to point out one thing right here. If that is always your narrative for the past, I don't know how many elections. Well, they were rigged. They were rigged. They stole the elections. They did. If your party has fell victim to that over and over and over again, and your party is unable to come up with something to bypass their rigging of the elections, that you can't come up with something to catch them red-handed, like, hey, this is direct evidence right here. If they continue to pull the wool over your eyes over and over again, you even have this My Pillow dude saying that he built a special website to keep an eye on the elections to make sure that they're not rigged, this, that, and the other thing. If you can't even come up with a countermeasure for it, then what does that say about the intelligence and the mental capacity of your candidates? And I don't want to be demeaning, but what does that say about the mental capacity of your party if they cannot plan accordingly or come up with something to bypass or to catch or whatever, to take preventative measures to make sure that it's an honest election, or at least better? I mean, I'm just saying, just think about that for a minute. And another thing is that, so what I've noticed in the conservative party, and this is really shocking to me. Okay, I'm saying this not as a liberal. Okay, I want people to hear me on this, because when I say stuff like this, I always get blamed and told that I'm a liberal. I am not a liberal. Okay, I am not. I have views that I think that go on both sides. I have, in general, in my past, I'm divulging a little bit of information here that maybe I shouldn't be. In my past, I have been majority of the time, I have been fiscally conservative consistently throughout my past. I'm being pushed away from that. I feel every year I kind of keep myself getting pushed away from that more and more. But part of the reasons is because we just always seem, for some reason, the conservative party has more and more over time gone from the party of what I considered integrity to the party of just demeaning everybody. Everybody that does not agree with them would not vote exactly the same way they are. Any political opponent who doesn't agree with them, who has slightly different views, is just an idiot. They're stupid. They can't talk right. They look like shit. They they're just morons. Like, they're just, if I don't know who in the hell would vote for that moron. And you're criticizing the people around you that you don't know who might vote for that person. And I want to give you this. If there's somebody that's kind of on the fence, okay, they're kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of conservative, but man, I just don't know, you're just kind of on the fence a little bit. When they hear stuff like that, you are actually pushing them away from you, your party, and your view, because those things, when you say things like that, do not sound attractive to people like that at all. You're not winning anybody over. The only people that sounds good to are people who already think like you. You're not helping your situation. You are pushing people away. Maybe people are sick and tired of people propping up this bullshit excuse for, that, well, we're always just beaten, the elections are always stolen. Once you have demonized, degraded, and called all of these political opponents idiots. If you call atheists idiots, if it's in the religious department or just whatever worldview you have, when you call them morons and stuff like that, and then they win, okay, and then they go and win, you can't all of a sudden go back and say, well, we were beaten by an idiot. Like, if we can't beat an idiot, like if our policies are so jacked, if they're so weak, if people hate our policies so bad that they actually elected this idiot over here, what does that say about you? So once you have demeaned them, you have degraded them, you have run them into the dirt, you have slandered their name, rather than actually focusing on being a good person yourself and actually coming up with good policies that people can vote for, you just slander the other person. Well, when you do that, when you take such a hard-nosed stance and then you get beaten, you can't go back and just admit that you were beaten fair and square. Because how does that look? What does that say for you when you lost to somebody that you've been calling an idiot this whole time? For the last 2 years, you've been calling this person an idiot, and now you got beaten by him. What does that say? You can't go back and say, oh, my bad, guys. Yeah, they beat me fair and square. I'm done. No, you're immediately going to fall to making more accusations, and that is going to just default the last several years anyways to rigged elections. That's all that's all that it is. And to me, when somebody comes and they're actually trying to have a constructive conversation anymore, and they come up to me, even as somebody who has been historically a conservative, when you come to me with that argument, I'm sorry, but you pretty much have lost it in my brain already, because that is just simply what is defaulted, and I can almost guarantee that that is just simply being parroted by what this person or whoever has heard by their inner circles, and they haven't actually had a constructive conversation with people who do not look or think the way that they do. That pretty much tells me, unless you can change my mind within like the first, give me that one liner in the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes at the most of our conversation, that you have a unique train of thought, then I'm just really, I'm probably not going to argue with you, because it's kind of pointless at that point. But you're not going to be bringing me over to your side. In other words, if you're just going to give me the same old 1-line, 2-line, 5-minute conversation that I've heard 5 years ago, it's just not going to matter. So what does this do for us when we're surrounded by this type of stuff? It keeps us from growing. Okay, it stunts your growth. Part of the reason for this is because you never take an introspective look at what could I do to improve myself. It is always, always, always going to default to further demonization and further criticizing of your opponents, of everyone around you. Everything is going to end up being somebody else's fault. It doesn't even have to be in politics. It could be on, why did I not make the team? Why did I not get the job? Why did I not do this? When you start participating in this Vranyo, right? In other parts of your life, all of a sudden then when you go out and you didn't get the promotion, well, it was because this person slept their way to the top. This person is an idiot. I don't understand why they got it. They must have done something to get it. They bribed their way there. They slept their way there. The person who chose them is just an idiot. And you don't look at yourself and see, well, what did I not have that the other person did? Why not go talk to that person, or even go talk to the person who made the decision, who hired the other person and not you, or promoted the other person and not you, rather than getting bitter? What would that say to your manager if you would go and ask in a constructive way and be like, hey, hey, I saw that this other person got promoted and not me. Can I sit down and just ask why? Like, can you just, what, I'm trying to better myself, I'm trying to improve myself. Why did this person get promoted and not me? What would that say about your integrity and your character? I bet you the next time, just by having that conversation with your manager, if another spot opened up for promotion, you would probably be pretty high on that person's list, because that right there speaks volumes to somebody. It doesn't. Most people have the idea that if you're a decent human being and you actually are critical of yourself and see what you can do to further grow yourself, and you're honest about it, and you actually let people know when you're wrong, and you're willing to see that every now and then you've just been beat, man. I mean, this other person had qualities I don't have. I mean, when you're honest like that and people see it and you're vulnerable, that doesn't make you look like an idiot. Like these governors that got beaten, they were so hardcore Trump that they were mimicking his actions. That's what you didn't see it before Trump, but they really tried to mimic his actions to try to get that small group that they were trying to win over or whatever. They would mimic those actions and they would go out there and call other people idiots. They were actually trying to be brash. They were trying to be harsh to mimic Trump's actions, and they had no problems calling somebody else an idiot. What that did is it actually isolated themselves, and it took the people who were not in that small fringe of people who were outside of that extreme right, and it isolated them too. It pushed them to the fringes, it pushed them out to the center, where there were a lot of people that came out and voted not for the Liberal Party, not for the Democrat, not for the opponent, but against the people who are talking like that. I can say this 100% with because of the conversations I have had personally. This isn't just what I've heard from hearsay, third party news channel. I have had these conversations with people, and there is a large group of young people that are coming out and voting by the droves just simply because they're afraid of what they see going on in the right now. They see it and they say, whatever that is, I don't want it, and I'm going to go out and vote for the first time in my life just simply so that this other person does not win, just simply so this party does not win. Republicans right now are their own worst enemy. So is the church. The church creates more atheists than anybody else. And the conservative Republican Party right now is creating more liberals than the liberals ever have. The conservative party right now is the Democrats' best friend because they are creating so many enemies right now. I I don't want to make any statements, but I think politically it's going to be very tough for the Republicans and the Conservative Party going forward for a very long time. I think they've shot themselves in the ass very solidly. So what do we find out by this? The Vranyo. I have noticed this in my own life, okay? But this pleasant lie, this expected lie, is never the easiest way to go because there is always going to be a day of reckoning when you're going to have to meet up with your lies. You can normally come up with different lies to kind of keep you going for a while when you're confronted with certain things, but after a while that doesn't work anymore. You are actually going to have to put up or shut up. Russia, and part of this is the West problem. We propped them up because we needed to have an enemy. We needed to have an excuse for spending trillions of dollars on a defense industry and spending ridiculous amounts of money in NATO. So we propped them up to be something that they were not. And our defense industry knew it. We knew that they weren't what we said they were or what Russia said they were either. But nonetheless, the Russians lied themselves into having this true pure army that was supposed to give the world a run for their money. And all of it looked great on paper. It looked like they had all their ducks in a row and that this was going to be a serious force to be reckoned with. And guess what? When it came time to actually put the theories and the reports and everything into practice, it failed, and embarrassingly so. Uh, the troops themselves, normally the victims are not the people who created the mess. So the people who are going and having to run into heavily entrenched Ukrainians and banging their head up against the wall and dying by the droves are not the commanders, okay? The people that are paying for it are normally not the ones who come up with the lie, okay? Um, the same is true in the political parties. The people who are falling victim to the political parties' lies are normally not the ones who came up with them, but they're paying for it. Okay, they're paying for it now because their candidates and their ideas are not being represented the way that they believe they are because they have been fed certain lies that were probably made up by some of the people that they're actually voting for. And that was a real big eye opener for me, is that the people in the Conservative Party and people who actually even vote conservative are actually not the party of integrity the way that I was told. But anyways, nonetheless, I digress. So when things came down to actual brass tacks, so to speak, things failed miserably because the decisions that were made based off of the information that they had was incomplete, it was false, it was inaccurate. The algorithms did not work because what was true in real life was much, much different than what was given to them on paper. So now you have the Joe, the little guy, the small guy, out there running, attacking a village or a town 3, 4 times, and people getting mowed down by the droves because their commanders can't understand why they can't take it. I punch in all the data and it tells me we have a 95% success rate. The lieutenant, if you guys don't take it, you get fired. So the lieutenant says, hey, we had okay success, while they're sitting there in their trenches, pretty much getting shot up. Okay, well then we'll send in more reinforcements behind you to push the success. We want to reinforce where we're having successes. And they keep on reporting, hey, it's going okay, it's going okay. Okay, we'll send you more troops. What they don't understand is that they're sending wave upon wave of people in there that are just getting slaughtered. And the same thing is true, and to obviously a lesser degree, in our own personal lives, that we try to push and reinforce successes that are simply not happening. We try to reinforce candidates that claim success that are utterly failing. And we have been fed these lies over and over again. And when people come out and criticize it and start saying, hey, take a step back and take a look at what's really going on, don't ostracize them. Don't push them to the fringes. Don't make them leave your party because you won't accept them anymore. Don't make them walk out of your church door because you don't accept them anymore. Don't make them leave Christianity because you won't call them a Christian anymore. Don't make somebody angry, hurt them, or push them out by calling them a heretic because they have some questions. Okay? This is why conservatism in the United States is failing quickly. It's floundering. It's dying. It is struggling. It's trying to grasp at anything that it can to stay alive right now because it has ostracized so many people. It has pushed so many people to the fringes, and they refuse continually to take an introspective look at themselves, to criticize themselves and say, what are we doing wrong? I even heard it over these midterms where the excuses are rampant. I mean, they are blaming everything. Now they're also turning on Donald Trump, which should have happened 2 years ago, if not more. It should have happened a long time ago. You got people like this guy that, who was, raised his fist, yeah, you guys go, but then he's running when he gets inside the Capitol building, running away from the protesters. And now he was such a staunch Trump supporter, and now he is saying, oh, that party is so yesterday, Trump is yesterday, and we need to move on, blah, 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 which isn't necessarily wrong, but he's not doing it from a place of integrity. He's doing it because he saw that the midterms sucked for the Conservative Party. And now he's trying to distance himself, and he will play any side that he has to in order to be popular amongst his constituents, essentially. That type of stuff has to stop. People see that all the time. The people who are not hard right, who are not entrenched in their beliefs, who will never listen to any outside thing, can see it so clearly. But yet, the people who want to stay inside of their little bubbles and not take any criticism from their friends, like, this is not your enemies. These are your friends trying to say, guys, we have to do something different. And now you see people saying that they don't even need to go vote anymore. They're not even going to go vote anymore because it's just going to be rigged. And that's their excuse for losing. It's like, no, it's not. I know many people who went and voted liberal this election season because they simply didn't want to vote conservative for no other reason, because they saw how toxic that party is right now. Anyways, this video is getting to be a little bit long. Check out my other ones if you want to see other videos kind of like this. I will have more interviews coming up. I have people that I've talked to that I'm just waiting to finalize everything with. Some of these I'm going to do by myself in between those if I feel like I have something to say. But anyways, if you like this, if you want to hear more interesting conversations with people, I've got a very interesting person coming up here in the near future. Then stay tuned and subscribe, like, so you can be notified of this. And we'll see you guys on the next one.